The Hungarian Grand Prix was Red Bull's 12th victory in a row, giving them the record for the most consecutive race wins in Formula One history. The team have absolutely nailed the new regulations, and so far, no one's really got within touching distance of them, but that might be about to change. The team are starting to feel the effects of the punishment from their budget cap breach, and that is making their preparations for next season much more difficult as well. Today, we're going to talk about the incredible achievement of winning 12 races in a row, and why that streak is going to be ended in the near future. Let's get started. Max Verstappen described his comfortable victory in the Hungarian Grand Prix as a pretty perfect day, and it is increasingly looking as if this could become a perfect season for his Red Bull team, as they sweep all before them in Formula One. Verstappen's dominant drive in the Hungaroring resulted in a record being broken. It was Red Bull's 12th consecutive victory, starting from last season's final race in Abu Dhabi, and it moves them past the 11 wins in a row achieved by McLaren in 1988. That was the year that the combination of Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, and the McLaren MP44 chassis and Honda's turbo engine set new standards by putting the two best drivers in the world, two of the greatest of all time, into one of the all-time great cars, produced by a team whose drive for perfection moved the game on in that era. Red Bull also have a Honda engine, but the combination of this team and Verstappen is so powerful this year that they don't need a second driver even close to his caliber. Sergio Perez managed to squeeze in a couple of victories in the first 4 races of the year, but he has been making heavy weather of the summer, and Verstappen is now on a run of 7 victories in a row, and giving every impression of being unbeatable. At this rate, a lot of F1's records will be smashed in 2023. Mercedes' achievement of 19 victories in a year, set in 2016, is beginning to look vulnerable, as is McLaren's other record from 1988, winning all but one race. Red Bull have the potential to become the first team to sweep the board. On the driver front, next up for Verstappen is Sebastian Vettel's record of 9 wins in a row, set with Red Bull in 2013. And Verstappen could smash his own record of 15 wins in a single season, achieved only last year. There will always be a question as to how much they might have benefited by breaking the budget cap in 2021, when last year's car, the parent of this one, was being designed though. And that brings us to the punishment for that budget cap breach. F1 introduced the first ever set of financial regulations for 2021 in a bid to encourage a more competitive championship. The hope was that by enforcing a limit on spending, F1 would help level the playing field more by enabling smaller teams with less resources to compete in an environment against teams boasting huge budgets. Mercedes was previously known to be spending upwards of $400 million per season. The FIA found Red Bull guilty of a minor overspend of the 2021 $145 million budget, while Verstappen was wrapping up the 2022 title in a huge end-of-season scandal. Team principal Christian Horner claimed the overspend did not affect their performance, and Red Bull were hit with a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in aero testing for 2023 as punishment. 13 areas were incorrectly interpreted by Red Bull, including the now notorious staff catering. But Red Bull are dominating in 2023 despite their punishment, leading Lewis Hamilton to criticise, "I mean, there wasn't really a big punishment last time, so there's no real deterrent. There will be people that will probably go for it again, and know they're just going to get a slap on the wrist." The expectation that Red Bull would come into 2023 handicapped has resulted from a big misunderstanding of the car development process and how the punishment was enforced. By the time Red Bull were given their punishment in 2022, they were already well into the development cycle for their 2023 car. The 10% reduction in testing time didn't take effect until October 2022. At that point, a lot of the design and testing of the launch spec for the 2023 car has already been done. Red Bull knew the avenues for development they were going to explore first, so they could be very specific with their design and testing over the winter. As the car developed, they had to find new development avenues and do more experimental testing. This is where the testing punishment started to bite. It's been easy to miss because of how dominant Red Bull have been, but comparatively, they've introduced barely any upgrades to their car. Having introduced an upgrade package for the RB19 in Hungary, the scene of Max Verstappen's most dominant win of the year so far, Horner said the extent of their wind tunnel time deficit means no further updates can be brought to the car. At the midway point of the season, Verstappen now has a 110-point lead in the Drivers' Championship over teammate Sergio Perez, while Red Bull has a 229-point lead over Mercedes in the constructors' standings. The update of the Red Bull included a revised floor and reprofiled upper bodywork, resulting in an advantage of nearly 0.5 seconds per lap during Sunday's Grand Prix. With such a large advantage in place, the RB19 will now only receive smaller upgrades for the rest of the season, aimed at tailoring the existing package to the demands of the 11 remaining circuits. Team principal Christian Horner said the aerodynamic testing restrictions imposed on Red Bull as a penalty for breaking F1's cost cap in 2021 meant the team could no longer commit its valuable research and development time to this year's car, instead focusing fully on 2024. The upgrades did what they said on the tin, so from that point of view it's a box ticked, Horner said. Now with the handicap that we have to really swing our focus over to next year, because we have a significant deficit in wind tunnel time compared to our competitors, and we have to be very selective in how we use it. We have a few circuit-specific things still to come in 2023, but nothing that hasn't been done already or committed to in research and development. Under F1's aerodynamic testing restrictions, which apply a sliding scale of development capability based on where each team finishes in the Constructors' Championship at 6-month intervals, Red Bull has the least wind tunnel time and CFD freedom of any team. On top of that, it also has a 10% reduction in aerodynamic testing in place until October as a result of its cost cap breach. Horner said rival teams, including McLaren, which has emerged as Red Bull's closest competitor at the last 2 races, still have a significant advantage in car development. We have that penalty until October this year, so particularly in terms of the amount of runs you can do per week, we are significantly down compared to 2nd, 3rd place, and massively down compared to teams in 4th and 5th. So if you compare what McLaren can do in the wind tunnel compared to ourselves, it's a huge difference. Of course, we have to be very selective in the runs that we are doing, and that's where the engineering team back in Milton Keynes are doing an incredible job, the way they are effectively and efficiently developing the car. The gap has been closing. In qualifying, Red Bull are now being threatened by other cars. Lewis Hamilton managed to take pole position from the reigning champion in Hungary, and McLaren weren't far behind him. Sergio Perez is struggling, and even when he has a clean qualifying, he isn't anywhere near the top drivers from other teams. For Red Bull, winning both titles seems all but certain at this point of the season, having won all 11 of the Grand Prix so far. The possibility of winning every single race to become the sport's most dominant team ever is a possibility. We don't see it happening though. Red Bull's testing punishment means they simply cannot bring any more updates to their car. Last season, we saw Mercedes continue to develop late on in the season, allowing George Russell to take a shock race win in Brazil. Red Bull are vulnerable for the rest of the season. There isn't an avenue for another team to challenge for a championship title, but after the summer break, we expect things to be much more competitive at the front of the pack. And next season should start on a much leveler playing field, as the regulations bring the teams closer together than ever before. Verstappen and Red Bull can now be mentioned alongside the great dominant combinations of history: Alberto Ascari and Ferrari in 1952-53, Juan Manuel Fangio and Mercedes in 1945-55, Jim Clark and Lotus in the 1960s, Nigel Mansell in the Technology Fest Williams FW14B in 1992, Michael Schumacher and Ferrari in the 2000s. The Red Bull RB19 will go down in history as one of the great cars, and is quickly making a case to be considered the greatest ever. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff said on Sunday that it was like a field of Formula 2 cars against a Formula 1. But while Red Bull team principal Christian Horner spent a fair bit of time during the years of Mercedes' domination complaining about it making F1 boring, Wolff is not about to do the same. "I love this sport because it is meritocratic," he said. "As long as you're moving within the regulations and entertainment follows sport, not the other way around." In Verstappen, this rocket machine is being driven by a generational talent, someone who can be mentioned alongside all the great names, and is building numbers to compare with them too. Who do you think will be the driver to put an end to Max and Red Bull's incredible winning streak? Give me your predictions in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.